Water dances where visions begin. Science reveals the life within.
You're listening to the Mike Cara radio program, Eye on the Nation.
Well, welcome back to our next edition of the Mike Cara radio program, Eye on the Nation. We definitely have our Eye on the Nation, as always, proudly broadcasting from Ocoee, Florida, USA, planet Earth. And my guest today is Mr. Brian Stack, who is a writer and performer on Conan. So we're very excited to have Brian here today. Of course, Brian, besides being a writer on Conan, also is, of course, Frankenstein, who I don't really think so, but the segment is called Frankenstein Wastes a Minute of Your Time, and a few years back there was a funny skit with Tom Hanks, and that's on YouTube. We encourage everyone to check that out. And first of all, Brian, I do want to mention the fact that I understand that you performed at Second City. Was that right?
Yeah, I worked there for about 4 years just before moving to New York to work with Conan at late night back in '97. I worked at Second City from 92 till 97.
Okay, I bring that up because there's a very good chance, if that's the case, I might actually have seen you performing at Second City. So you were one of the actual performers then.
Yes, I was first. The first 2 years I was in the touring company though, so we were traveling. You're on the road, going to wherever they send you. A lot of colleges and towns, you go all over the country. And then for 2 years, I was in one of the resident companies, which was called the ETC. It's sort of like one of the two stages they have in the Old Town section of Chicago. There's the main stage, which you most likely probably is the one you saw. And then there was the second stage, ETC, which is where I worked.
Oh, so you
I got offered the job at Conan when I was working in that second resident company.
Oh, so you probably weren't on the main stage, so probably didn't see you. But I never know, because I remember going, I think it was like in 96 or so, and I was just remembering that. I said that would have been pretty cool. But I'm myself, actually, Brian will talk about this, from the Chicagoland area. I was most recently moved from Woodridge, Illinois, and we understand, Brian, that you grew up in like the Palatine area and went to high school in Arlington Heights. Was that right?
That's right, yeah. And before I forget, if you saw Second City in 96, you probably saw Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and those people, because they were the ones in the main stage cast at the time. But I grew up in the Chicago burbs there, and went to high school at St. Viator in Arlington Heights.
Oh, fantastic. So basically, tell us a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned that you started in Second City, and tell us a little bit about then after that, you pretty much started working for Conan, and you've been doing that for like 15 years then.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. It really has flown by. I was originally supposed to go out for like 3 months to fill in for another writer, and they luckily they liked the stuff I was doing and figured out a way to hang on to me even when that guy came back. But it's been a great place to work and a great bunch of people. I've had a lot of good times working with Conan and the rest of the people.
Oh, fantastic. And as we mentioned, Brian, that not only do you are a writer, which we'll talk about, that you're actually a performer, and we mentioned about Frankenstein. Is that something that you still do, or?
I did it once or twice at the new show, but we don't do it. It's pretty rare. And a lot of the old characters I did at late night, like the Interrupter or the Ghost Crooner and things like that, kind of stayed with NBC. Under that umbrella. So, I was lucky enough to get to do those characters a lot, and I get to do some new characters on the new show, and that's been fun too.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, you have some new characters that you do, and those are ones that you've done fairly recently then. Yeah,
like I did... been doing this character called the Fashion Assassin. When we do the Audiency Awards, he comes out and is just a typical catty fashion correspondent who insults everybody's clothes, and just a lot of times it's kind of based on the people that stand on the red carpet and say catty things at award shows. And then I do a character who sings basic cable name that tune, which is because we can't afford the rights to real popular songs, we do these knockoff versions and have the audience guess what song we're ripping off. And that's a fun bit to do, too.
Oh, fantastic! And yeah, as we mentioned, Brian, that you've been with Conan, and you were all a part. I guess Conan then takes his writers with him. Then when he left NBC, then, huh?
Yeah, almost everyone came over, and along with the office staff and the band and the crew, it was nice that for the most part the family stayed together, with a few exceptions, and we miss those people. But like, not everybody made the move to LA when we left New York, and not everybody made the move from the Tonight Show to the news show, but most people did.
Oh, no, that's good to hear. So Brian, tell us a little bit about, we mentioned, a little bit about your performing, but tell us a little bit about your writing and what specifically that you write for Conan. Is it the skits? Is it the monologue? Or?
I don't usually work on the monologue, except when Conan's, like, when he hosted the Emmys a couple times, we all worked on the monologue because it was such a big part of the show. And I do occasionally toss in some monologue jokes, but mostly what I work on is the sketch bits and the character bits and things like that, and or the desk pieces, what things that Andy and Conan do when they're at the desk and things like that. So it's fun sometimes to just try writing up some monologue jokes if we have time, and sometimes they get a little. Sometimes the monologue writers might need a little extra help if it's a bad news day or something. And so it's a fun challenge to try to do that once in a while.
Oh, so yeah, so there's a variety of things there. Now, we were talking about Frankenstein. Now, do you actually write those skits yourself then, or?
I used to work on those with, most of the time with Brian McCann, who's another veteran writer at the show. And I wrote some of them on my own. I wrote some of them with Brian, or Brian had ideas for some of them himself. And so, yeah, it was usually a collaboration. And I think, like, originally, I think Brian had in mind that I'd be doing Frankenstein more like the movie Frankenstein. And for some reason, maybe because of my own personality, he ended up being more like kind of a big kid who just wanted to please everybody. And so it was more like he really doesn't bear any resemblance other than his appearance to the original movie Frankenstein. He's more of a silly, goofy kid.
Oh, right. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about, your day as a writer then. I mean, are you necessarily working with people, or do you work on these bits on your own and then you have all come together? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes we're all in the room together, kicking ideas around. Other times you might have an idea on your own or with another writer, and you go off and work on that on your own or with that other one or two writers, and then you bring it into the head writer, and he reads it over and might suggest a change or two. And then at rehearsal, things sometimes change there too, because Conan, being a brilliant writer himself, often has good ideas for how to improve things and or tweak them a little bit or come up with a stronger ending. And so it's a very collaborative thing between yourself, the other writers, the head writer, and Conan. So that's things often get changed at rehearsal.
Oh, so during rehearsal, then there changes could happen. And I mean, you usually then once everything is through rehearsal, and then it pretty much you do it then. Yeah,
most of the time. Like sometimes things go in exactly as you wrote them, and Conan doesn't want to change anything. But I'd say a good percentage of the time there are some minor changes made or cuts to make things move a little faster or things like that. But sometimes things go right through exactly as you wrote them and without a change at all.
Right. And so, I mean, we see Conan and Andy there. And, I mean, how much of that, I mean, is everything written for them, or is there room for them to do a lot of ad-libbing then? Or?
They do a ton of ad-libbing. Like most of the conversations they'll have are all, that's just them being spontaneous, unless it's a sketch that's designed to look like a conversation, where something happens like that's clearly written. But no, their conversations. They're both great improvisers. I used to do improv with Andy in Chicago years ago, and he's a terrifically quick mind and very, very witty. And so is Conan. And I think they often enjoy when things go wrong or go off the rails, so they can play with it a little bit. Like they like to keep things pretty loose.
Oh, okay. And now we know, of course, Conan has a lot of guests there, and again, we'll come back to the Tom Hanks, skit with you. And was that something that you rehearsed a lot, or was that kind of just a lot of improv there? Or
oh, the bit with Tom Hanks?
Yeah,
that was actually, interestingly enough, that was part live and part pre-taped. He was nice enough to shoot that for us when he was in town, and he wasn't actually there live when the piece aired. We shot him in the hallway because of his schedule, and then we edited it. We cut from a live shot of me running backstage to a pre-tape shot of me going out into the hall with Tom Hanks, and he couldn't have been nicer. It's nice when people live up to what you kind of hope they'll be, and he was very playful. He had the idea to get just as excited about the stupid little light switch as Frankenstein was, and he started jumping up and down too, like Frankenstein was. And Conan always had said when Tom Hanks hosted SNL, he was one of the few hosts that would stay up all night with the writers, roll up his sleeves, and just really wanted to make the show as funny as possible. He's one of the good ones, and it was nice it was exciting to meet him too, and he was incredibly nice.
Oh, fantastic! So I mean, have you worked with other guests similar to that, or I don't know if Frankenstein has, or?
Oh yeah, we've often had a lot of celebrities really enjoy doing the bits for us. Like we used to do Celebrity Secrets, where we would write a bunch of fake secrets that these celebrities had, and we had David Bowie and U2 and Harrison Ford and Tom Hanks and Snoop Dogg, and all these people would do their bits for us, and that was really fun because they would read these supposedly deep, dark secrets that they had that we had just written. They were all jokes. And Will Ferrell almost always likes to do a bit when he comes on the show, and he's incredibly funny, obviously, and very playful, and doesn't have an ego and doesn't worry about looking silly. And he did a really silly bit last time he was on the show about how he had trained all these dogs painstakingly to do these amazing tricks. And then we just let a bunch of dogs out there that had not been trained at all, and he was just screaming at them as if they were disappointing him. And he didn't even rehearse the bit. He just went out and winged it, and it's a real treat to work with people like that who just want to play, and have a good time.
Right, and we mentioned, Brian, that Andy and Conan and a lot of the other celebrities do a lot of improv. But with your bits, is there room for improv for you to do during your skits too, or?
Yeah, that's part of the fun. Is that I think I've often, especially when things go wrong, Conan likes to riff around, and we've gotten to do some improv within scenes. Like I remember once I was playing God, and I was coming down the stairs back in New York, and I'm pretty clumsy, and I was wearing sandals, and I slipped a little bit, and Conan asked if he'd been drinking, and we ended up having a brief conversation about God being drunk, and that was completely unplanned, but it was really fun, and the audience gets a kick out of it because they know something accidental has just happened. And if you don't treat it as a mistake and you just play with it, it can be really fun. Those can often be the most fun moments on the show. When you're just kind of rolling with it, which is something that we learned back in the improv days in Chicago, which is just don't treat mistakes like mistakes. Treat them as opportunities to goof around. And because the audience knows there's been a mistake made, so you might as well have fun with it.
Right. And we know now, Brian, with the Olympics coming up, do you have any plans to be doing any like Olympic theme skits, or?
I think we're going to do a rejected Olympic mascot thing this week. The mascots that were too creepy to be to make the Olympics ceremony, and we might do some more Olympic-related stuff. Some of it will depend probably on what happens. Like, we kind of have to wait to see what happens with the events and, and then react to that. I assume we will be doing at least one or two things on it, maybe more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. As we mentioned, Brian, that for the first, actually it was almost 13 or 14 years you were in New York, and then when Conan had moved then to L.A., was it a big transition? I mean, for you then, you basically followed him, so then it was kind of a new experience for you then.
It really was a big transition coming out here. It helps a lot, though, that almost all of our old friends from Chicago and New York live in L.A. now. It seems like everybody's kind of made the move here because this is where most of the work happens. So it really feels a lot like Chicago West out here. Like, I go to a backyard barbecue, and I feel like I'm back in Chicago because everyone I knew in Chicago lives in L.A. And that helps a lot, and there's a lot of our friends have kids now, and I have a couple kids, and so there's a real sense of community in LA of kind of expatriates from Chicago and New York, all kind of relying on each other out here.
Oh, so they in a lot of different people. So so all the people from Chicago and New York have moved over. So that's great. That you could still keep in touch with everybody because everybody's there then. Yeah,
exactly. And there's a couple some former Chicagoans and former New Yorkers have started up some really great improv theaters out here. Like, I used to do I.O. in Chicago before Second City, which used to be called Improv Olympic. And interestingly, the Olympic Committee made them change the name to I.O. They're very litigious. And so there's an Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which I used to do a lot of stuff at in New York. They opened a theater here, and it's incredibly successful and popular. And so there's some really exciting stuff happening in improv and sketch on stages in LA. It didn't used to be much of an improv scene in theaters out here, and now it's really thriving and drawing a lot of people and growing every year.
Oh, so Brian, I wanted to ask you now: are you doing anything else? I don't know if you can, but then Conan. I mean, are you doing any other improv, or is your focus just working at Conan then?
I do some shows. I usually do at least one or two shows a month on the improv stages here in town with like old friends and a lot of old Chicago friends. Like Bill Murray's brother Joel was the Second City guy, and he hosts a show that we do like every couple weeks at I.O. West. I'll occasionally go by and do the Ass Cat show at UCB, which I used to do in New York all the time, and they do that on weekends out here. And so, I still keep my hand in now and then. It's a little hard sometimes with the kids and work to get out to do it, but I try to do it at least once or twice a month.
Oh, that's great. And so that's you mentioned that that's usually then in LA somewhere?
Yeah. There's I.O. West, which is an extension of the I.O. that was in Chicago. That's right in Hollywood, and they do a lot of fun shows there during the week. And UCB has a theater here too, which is incredibly popular. And it's not a big space, but it's they always have 3 or 4 shows going on every night, and a great mix of sketch and stand-up and improv and multimedia stuff. And it's an incredibly, and I think also because it's LA and it's Hollywood, they draw some celebrities that want to do improv too, which is something you didn't usually see in Chicago. Usually, what you'd see in Chicago, or if you were lucky, you'd see future celebrities. But in LA, they all love getting up on stage, so you'll see people from TV shows and movies going by UCB. Some of them even take classes there. Like Heather Graham was taking classes there, and Alyssa Milano, and people like John Hamm will just stop by and do an improv show because it's just fun. And that's very exciting, and it's something it took a little getting used to because you didn't see that in Chicago.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if you're allowed, Brian, or you would want to, but I mean, can you do any of the Conan, characters with your own improv act? Do you like to do original characters, or do you do characters? Yeah, if it's improv.
Oh yeah. You know, I've never done a Conan character in an improv show, but I think I've done some characters that were similar. Like, for example, I used to do a traveling salesman character who talks in a kind of old-time 1930s voice, sort of like this. Hey, little girl, is your mother home? That kind of thing. And so I've done some characters that talk in kind of old-timey ways and things like that are similar to Conan characters. But the only time I ever did a Conan character on stage was at a Conan Writers night where I did the interrupter on stage because the person putting up the show kind of requested it. And yeah, not usually. They were usually exclusively for the show.
Oh, great! So now in Conan, Brian, are you the only guy that does, like, if there's like a certain skit or they need somebody? I mean, are you the only writer that does skit, or is there other writers that currently do that, or are you asked to do everything, or?
We actually have several writers that are also performers, and that's always been, I think, one of the fun things about being a writer there is, you know, sometimes you'll cast another writer in your bit, or they'll cast you in theirs. And, for example, one of the writers had me do a chicken puppet this week that was an intolerant chicken puppet, and it was his concept, but he asked me to do it, and sometimes I've asked him to do bits that I've written. It usually depends on who you think will be best for the role. Like Brian McCann, who was a Chicago improv friend of mine before working at Conan, has done tons of character bits on the show. You probably recognize him immediately, even if you can't place the name to the face, because he's probably been he's certainly been one of the most visible writers the show's ever had. He's been in countless bits, and the other writers like Andre Dubuchet and Dan Cronin and Laurie Kilmartin and Jose Arroyo, they all tend to appear at least once in a while on the show, some more than others.
Oh, okay. So how many actual writers do you have then?
Well, I think there's 3 or 4 monologue writers. And then there's I'm trying to think, maybe like 8. God, am I crazy here? 8. And then we have our head writer, Mike Sweeney, who's a great guy to work for and has been writing there since the early 90s. And, yeah, so it's like there's several of us, and not all of them perform regularly, but quite a few of them do.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned Mike Sweeney, the head writer. I know on Saturday Night Live we always see head writers. So, I mean, the duties of the head writer then essentially is they're writing too, but I mean, they're kind of in charge of what all the other writers write, or how does that work? Yeah,
you kind of filter everything. He's sort of the filter between us and Conan, and he'll read our stuff and maybe make a suggestion. He doesn't always have time to write a lot of stuff himself because he's supervising everyone else's writing. I think that's one of the only downsides to being a head writer is that you don't always get to write. You don't have time to write a whole sketch yourself or whatever. But Mike has tons of ideas that he's tossed in, or ideas for improving things. And, you're sort of in a supervisory position trying to tweak and improve the writing that the other writers are doing. Like, that's very similar to SNL. And Conan had been a writer at SNL, which you may know, and he brought over a lot of the stuff he liked about their system to our show, where the writers are very actively involved in producing their bits. Like, they make the calls on how they want the wardrobe to look and what graphics should look like and things like that. So the writer kind of produces their piece. And that was something Conan brought over from SNL. Lorne Michaels had always set up a system like that. And Conan liked it, and he didn't want to. He brought that over.
Oh, Okay, and now a question I have right now, as a performer, is probably a little different. But I mean, as a writer, essentially, then we mentioned that you write it and then go through rehearsal. But I mean, as far as like on the taping night, filming a night, are you? Well, you have to be there for the performing. But I mean, are the writers necessarily there to make sure everything goes, or is it pretty much there it is, and you just watch somewhere else, or?
We're there for the tapings, and sometimes you're right down in the studio because you're in a bit, or you might be watching it in your office on the closed circuit TV. But we're always there for the tapings, and sometimes we might have to. If there was a camera mistake or something, we might have to fix something right after the taping and editing before it goes out to TBS to air. We might have to do a little fix. Ideally, the show just tapes and everything's fine, but most of the time you have to do a little bit of editing or fixing. And our editors are super fast, and it's amazing how fast they can make changes. And then usually after the show, we have a meeting to talk about the next day's show or things that are coming up. So we're always there till after the taping, except on the last day of the week, like on the last night of taping of the week, sometimes they'll let us go right after the taping.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you had mentioned, Brian, that kind of like this show, the whole idea of Conan is to do it as live as possible, but a little editing, a little tweaking could be done. But pretty much, if everything goes smooth, then it's essentially, well, it's tape, but it's essentially live with a few tweaks. Then. Yeah,
I mean, what we shoot for every night is just basically doing a live to tape show, like where it just everything goes according to plan. And but sometimes there'll be like a camera fix, or there'll be a cut to the wrong camera or something, and we have to fix that. Or if something goes completely wrong, sometimes we've had to trim stuff out of the show. Like if something just goes disastrously wrong, sometimes that can be really funny, and we keep it in because of the way Conan reacts to it or something. And that's the majority of the time we just leave it in because Conan usually has fun with things going wrong. But sometimes something goes wrong and it's not funny and it just lays there so you try to, if you can, you try to fix it and take that out.
Oh, but as you mentioned, Brian, with Conan, a lot of times, he reacts to something. So most of the time, when he reacts to something, he usually will leave it in because it's funny for the most part. Then.
Yeah, I think he and Andy often have a lot of fun when things go wrong. I think when something goes wrong and it wasn't intentionally done, didn't go wrong intentionally, the audience can tell, and they enjoy seeing, Conan and Andy try to deal with it or react to it. And they almost always try to have a good time when things go wrong, and they usually do. So, I can remember once a slideshow that broke down completely. The machine broke down, and Conan just had to completely improvise and wing it. And I think he got up on his desk and he was doing the song and dance thing, and and the audience loved it. And it was just due to a complete technical meltdown that happened.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's good to know. And now I want to ask Brian. I'm not sure if the writers are involved in this, but I'm not sure. I'm sure a lot of times, Conan's interviewing a guest. There's a certain direction and certain questions, and kind of a vibe or a feel or an energy going on there. I mean, does the writers have anything to do with that, or is that all Conan and the guests that kind of work out where the interview is going then?
Well, we have a couple segment producers that actually usually figure out, they might talk to the guest the night before and say, hey, what do you want to talk about? And they don't script out any interviews with Conan or anything, but they usually Conan has some general ideas of what to talk about or what areas to cover. And we've occasionally the writers do occasionally get involved in the interview segments, like for example, Will Ferrell. A lot of times, after he does his little interview about his current project or whatever in his movie, he might do a bit that we've written or or that he had an idea for that we helped out with. Like, we did a bit once where we pre-taped him in the afternoon as a heckler who was yelling at him, and he was wearing a mustache, so it was clearly Will, but it was Will in disguise, and so Will was heckling himself in that bit. And so that was a bit that the writers worked on, but it was very funny, and it was him. Will was trying to do some stand-up, and then it would cut to this guy in the audience, played by Will, who was heckling him. So it was, so we've done bits like that, or like Zach Galifianakis, certain guests like Zach Galifianakis or Will or some others really enjoy doing the silly comedy bits. Ted Danson did one for us once, and that can be a lot of fun, getting involved with the guest segments now and then.
Oh, okay. So that sounds good. Okay, Brian. Now, do you have a website? Well, we know that you have Facebook. We're Facebook friends. That's pretty cool. But I mean, do you have information if people are in like the LA area and would like to see you perform? I mean, do you put that on your Facebook?
I occasionally do put up stuff if I'm doing a special show. I'll put that on Facebook. I don't have my own website or anything. Maybe I should, if everybody seems to have one these days. But I do, like if I'm doing a show that, I'll sometimes put it up on my Facebook page. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm going to do a show till that night. Some of the theaters and the groups are very nice about saying, just drop in, if you feel like it. And so it's pretty loose, but some of them are a little more scheduled, and I do try to put it up if I'm doing a special show or something. I usually put something on Facebook.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we could check that out. Okay, Brian. So right now you're pretty happy, as a writer, performer, and Conan. I mean, have any other dreams or pursuits, or you're happy where you are right now?
Well, I feel lucky to work with a lot of great people. I like the idea that at some point, like maybe trying to develop something, even while I'm still at Conan, like some kind of sitcom project or film project. I haven't made that happen yet, but I'd like to at least try, even if I fail. I'd like to give that a shot at some point. And Conan's got a production company, Conoco, that could sometimes, like they produced a couple former writers of our show, Michael Coleman and Andrew Weinberg, really hilarious guys that I used to write with a lot. They developed that show Eagle Heart, which is on Adult Swim with Chris Elliott, and that was produced by Conan's production company. And it's a great show if people haven't seen it. It's sort of a parody of Walker, Texas Ranger, but not really. It's just more like kind of its own original thing. But I would definitely check that show out. And I like the idea of developing something like that down the line.
Oh, okay. And we want to let everyone know, Brian, that people could check out, as we mentioned, Frankenstein and all your characters on YouTube, and they're all there. And again, you're still performing those different characters, so people could check that out. Okay, Brian, we appreciate your time. And any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to mention, or should we be on the lookout for?
Not particularly right now. I'm kind of drawing a blank, I'm sorry to say. But I do appreciate the fans that put those old sketches on YouTube because I don't even know how to do that. And I love that some of the old Interrupter sketches are on there, and one of the old Traveling Salesman sketches is on there, and a lot of the Frankenstein bits, and the Ghost Crooner, Artie Kendall, which I always love doing. There's even some of those on there, thanks to the fans who just put them up. So God bless them. There was even a fan from Finland that put the Tom Hanks Frankenstein bit up because it has Finnish subtitles. And I'm just grateful to those people for putting it up, because it's nice that some people can see them that might not have seen them otherwise, and otherwise they just kind of sit in a vault somewhere and nobody would see them. So YouTube has been great, and I'm a big fan of, I watch old SCTV bits on there, and it's a great resource for a lot of comedy history.
Oh, Okay, well, thanks so much, Brian. My guest has been Brian Stack, and you've been listening to the Mike Care radio program, Eye on the Nation, and please catch us again next time.